So I guess I will then start. It's 5 past, so let's start a great webinar of today. So we are today at the 17th YPIC webinar, and I'm here to warmly welcome Dr. Kaycie Butler, who is a scientific writing consultant and the founder of Butler Scientific Communications. And this is actually also how we found her. She has a great YouTube channel, which I can definitely recommend you having a look at after this webinar, because through her scientific writing consult, she has helped many scientists all over Europe as well as the USA and helped them communicate their research. She has developed simple step-by-step techniques that teaches us busy researchers to enhance our writing skills, reduce our stress, and increase the impact of our science. So yeah, that's why I want to welcome her today to give us today a talk about how to write an abstract from a black or blank page. And hopefully after today, you will be able to, with less stress, be able to take this challenge up onto you and hopefully write a great abstract, maybe for a next conference, or actually we from YPIC are also organizing next year. So I go to my next slide if it's working. Yes, we are we just recently stopped our student proteomics funding applications, where there was supposed to be writing an abstract for this, and we had already around 48 applicants for that. But of course, in the future, these skills you can definitely also use, for example, to write an abstract for maybe a poster or a presentation for the YPIC conference of 2025, which will be held in France from June 16 to 20. And of course, I then immediately come back to Kaycie. So we will soon start the webinar with Kaycie, where you can learn all these amazing skills. But before I do so, I would just like to inform you guys all that today's webinar is being recorded. And just to make it a bit more easier, we have changed one of my co-mediators into questions, as you might see in the list and also in the chat. So if there's any questions that might arise during the great webinar from Kaycie, feel free to ask the questions to Simon, who will then at the end of the webinar do a little Q&A, and hopefully all your questions will be answered by the end. So then hereby, the floor is yours, Kaycie, and you can share your screen.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right. We good? You see it?
Yes, I see it. Perfect.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the seminar. Thank you, Martha, so much for the nice introduction, and thank you guys for having me here. I am so excited that you found me through my YouTube channel because it is very near and dear to my heart, so I'm very glad that you guys love it. So guys, what I'm showing you here, first of all, on this screen on my title slide, there is a QR code here. If you are interested in having these slides for yourself as a reference for later, do please scan this QR code and grab that. I will let you know that this is going to capture your email. So as you scan this, it's going to ask you for your email address. And as soon as you confirm, that should go straight to your inbox. So if you are having trouble getting the slides, please let me know by the end of this little chat, and I can make sure that they get pushed to you before this is over. Okay. So guys, thank you so much for coming to this workshop, or I guess talk, on writing an abstract. So let's get started. Now, before I talk about abstracts per se, I'm going to talk a little bit about our research paper and how we want to think about it so that we can use this when we go in to write our abstract. So for your research paper, first, we're going to start our research paper at the edge of current knowledge in some area. So this is going to represent for us our gap, our research question, our hypothesis, whatever that is. This is where we are starting from. Then, through our research, we contribute some amount to this area. And with that, our contributions are going to move that edge of current knowledge. And so it is this change in that edge of knowledge from where it was at the beginning of our research project to where it moves to after we complete this project. That change is what we write about and what we publish in our research paper. And so said in other words, or said more technically for science, once our work advances the edge of knowledge, then we can publish our research paper. But guys, so this purple rectangle here is representing our research project. So everything in this purple rectangle is our data, it's our methods, it's our results, and likely everything that we have been thinking of day in and day out for probably the years that we have been working on this project. The problematic thing though, when we go to write anything, our research paper or our abstract, is that we need to remember that even though this little rectangle has been our entire life for years, it is really in the end only one small piece or one small part of this much bigger field with all these other things going on. And that even still is only one small microscopic piece of society and the world in general. And so when we approach our research paper, when we approach our abstract, what we need to remember is for a reader to be able to understand what we're doing, for them to be able to see why our project is important, why this work we're presenting to them is important, we need to zoom in like a lot to make this clear and make this obvious for our reader. And so we are going to start our research paper not just by throwing facts about our project to our reader. We're going to start by first zooming in to the edge of knowledge at the start of our research project. And conversely, at the end of our research paper, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to end by zooming out from that new edge of knowledge at the end of our project to help integrate our contribution into the field and into the world. And so this is what we are doing here with our research paper. We're zooming in to some edge of knowledge that we moved or changed, and then zooming out to show the reader how this integrates into the world. And so this represents our research paper, this purple hourglass here that I'm showing you, where from top to bottom, this height is our research paper from beginning to end. Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about here is the width from left to right. So this width represents the accessibility of our work to our audience at each point of the paper. So for instance, at the top here, or at the top and the bottom here, we have the broadest accessibility. The most accessible portions of the paper are located at the start of the introduction and at the end of the discussion. These will be the parts of your paper that are the most accessible to all of the different readers of your journal. And in the middle then, the narrowest portion is going to be the least accessible portion of your paper. This is the part that is going to relate to the least number of readers and is going to be most accessible basically to the experts in our field. And so this overall gives a brief outline of our research paper, not using technical terms like introduction discussion here, but essentially thinking about our paper like that the beginning of this paper is showing why we did this work. The middle of this paper is showing our contribution to this field or to this region. And then finally, at the end, we let the reader know why this work is important or why this work mattered. So this is what we're doing here in our research paper. But now, if this here represents our research paper, then how exactly do we want to think about our abstract? Because that's what we're really talking about, and that's what we're really focusing on here is this abstract. So if this hourglass shape here is our paper, our abstract is actually going to be the magazine cover that is advertising this paper to the world. And with that then, our abstract and also our title here, because they're both fairly important components, these highlight the key points of your paper for the reader and ultimately interest them in the rest of the paper. Guys, this is exactly like a magazine cover, okay? And I want you to think about this in the same way. Do you remember ever seeing a magazine cover with paragraphs of text on the front? Have you seen these magazine covers that have tons of information or giving you lots of facts and stuff on the front? Probably not. Usually these are little teaser statements that is just telling you kind of what's going on, helping you set your expectations, but most importantly, trying to interest you in what they want you to see and learn and get from their magazine. So this is how we're going to think about our abstract. And thinking about that even more, I've talked about the title and abstract here now, and these are very important components of our paper that we don't want to take lightly because way more people are going to read your abstract than ever read your paper, and way more people are going to read your title than ever read your abstract. So what we want to do at each point is try to get as many people as possible through this pipeline of title abstract into the body of our paper. And that's one of the things we're going to work on here when we focus on writing these abstracts that are compelling for our reader and interest them in opening our paper. So through that, I'm going to give you guys what I call a breakdown of an abstract. So I teach courses in writing all parts of your paper, basically from a blank page and up. And through this course, one of the first things that I do in each section is I take that section and I break it down into its component parts, show you how they all come together and how they all fit together. And so that's what we're going to do here today with our abstracts. So let's look at what is going on in a great abstract. To get started with that, first we have to talk about the key parts of an abstract. And so here, guys, I just want to let you guys know the abstracts are really going to condense a lot of the key information from our paper into one coherent magazine cover style advertisement for our research, which means that a lot of the different parts of our abstract are going to look like a lot of the different parts of our research paper itself, with the parts at the beginning of the abstract resembling our introduction, the parts in the middle of the abstract resembling our results section, and the parts at the end resembling the discussion section. Do note here, there's going to be some colors involved that I'm going to show you. The colors here right now are arbitrary. They're an artifact of the full-length workshop. So for now, you just have to know that the green stands for introduction, orange for results, and blue here, or purple here for discussion. And so looking at how this all comes together in our abstract, let's talk about first the different things that I'm going to look for in an abstract, and then I'm going to show you some examples. We're going to talk about how they all come together in one abstract. So the different parts of an abstract that we're going to focus on here today. First, we're going to focus on an overall problem. Our abstract is going to start by explaining to our reader something that they can access, that they can think about, that they understand, something that they know is important. And the goal here, what we really want to be able to do is show the reader right up front at the beginning of our abstract why it's even important to be studying in our field. Why is it important that we're doing this work in our field? Because if we can't convince a reader that working in our field is important, we've already lost the game, okay? The reader has to understand why it's important to work in our field before they are going to care about why it is important to work on our specific project. So we're going to start with making sure that there is a problem at the beginning that is clearly accessible to all the readers of our journal. And then as a second part of this, just to make sure it happens, we also want to make sure that this sentence tells the reader why they should care about this problem. There should be something in there, something in this sentence that lets the reader know why this is a problem they should be worried about, they should be focusing on, and that they should be thinking about here through this work. So this is how we're going to start our abstract. Then moving from there, we might talk about some previous work either that we have done or in our field. Here, guys, this is a section that may not be necessary, but we're going to be giving the reader enough background information to highlight the research gap in the field. So the research gap, the problem, whatever it was that led us to start this project, we want to highlight here in our abstract, and if we need to use some background information, we will include some previous work. Then, wrapping up our sections that resemble the introduction here, we're going to have a statement about the goal or objective or main hypothesis of this work. We want something that is clearly and directly worded, that is a one-sentence sort of umbrella statement of what is coming in this paper that's going to help set the tone here for the reader and show them the scope of your paper and what your study meant to address. So these are the 4 parts here of our abstract that are going to resemble our introduction. Now, moving on, we have the section everybody is usually most familiar with in the abstract, or the major findings or the key findings of the paper. This is the section that mostly resembles your results. And then finally, we are going to have a section on significance, or a section that indicates to the reader the importance of your work and why it mattered to study this work and why this particular work and these findings you are presenting deserve to be published. So these here are the key parts of an abstract that we're going to look at. So if my slides change, we're going to look at them. There we go. So guys, one thing I want to point out here is something you may have noticed now in the introduction parts of this abstract. I have a lot of different colors of green here. And that is because I'm going to highlight for you how the scope or accessibility of your paper changes through this introductory portion. So notice here that the colors I'm showing you of green start with the darkest shade of green at the top and moves into the lightest shade of green at the bottom. This darkest shade of green at the top is going to represent the part that is the most accessible for your reader. So this is the part that has the broadest accessibility and should be the most accessible to all of the different readers of your journal. Contrast that with the bottom green color, the very light, faint green color. This is the least accessible portion. So this is the portion that's going to be the narrowest in scope and the narrowest in accessibility. So if you see here the way that these colors are organized, we're starting with the most accessible portions at the top, and then we're funneling the reader down into the least accessible portions. And I will talk and show you this in an example as well. Okay, so moving into an example abstract. This abstract was taken from JACS, the Journal of the American Chemical Society. And I'm going to color this abstract according to these colors, and we are going to talk about what's going on here. So guys, when we color this abstract, a couple things to note. First, I'm going to give you guys just a moment to glance at this and start wrapping your head around it before I start talking about it. Okay, the first thing here to notice, I want us to look at how much of this abstract is taken up by the different parts of our abstract here. So notice that we have one sentence together for the overall problem and why people should care. We have one sentence for previous work because we needed to use this to get to the gap. We have one sentence of the goal objective statement, then 3 of the results or findings, and 1 of the significance. Now, while you guys look at this, I want you to note something reasonably important here. While the biggest chunk of this overall is our results and is our findings, I want you to note that this is not the majority of this abstract, okay? The majority of this abstract is actually taken up by the other parts surrounding the results. And in fact, the results here are only about half of the total text. So this is going to be my first recommendation for you guys when writing an abstract. Focus on keeping your findings or your results to no more than half of your abstract to give you enough space at the beginning to set up why your work is necessary and to give you the space at the end to talk about how your work has affected the field. So let's talk through each one of these parts step by step here. So notice here that first, the overall problem and why the reader should care are combined into the first sentence. This is really common. It almost always happens this way. I just split this out into 2 separate categories because somehow I was getting a lot of abstracts where people were talking about the problem, but not actually giving any reasoning or rationale of why people should focus on or care about that problem. So I just want to make sure that you think about it from both of these ends. You want to state the problem, but you also want to give people a reason to care about it. I would agree that this abstract is not the most perfect example of a good reason, but at least it is a reason. So this is what I want you guys to focus on in your work. Now, notice also though that this sentence, how it is written, is to make it accessible to all of the readers of this journal. Everybody who is coming into JACS is going to be understanding the role proteins play in biological processes and their release from biomaterials. And so this is something that they are going to be able to see and they're going to be able to relate to. They're not going to need more context or more explanation here. This is a good level. Now, moving down from that in this abstract, the next thing that we have is that research gap. So notice first, we have that research gap, okay? We have clearly stated a gap in the research or that edge of knowledge or whatever it was, wherever that edge in our field was when we started this project and that led to the development of this project, we want to make that clear for our reader. And here, guys, it's going to make your paper or your abstract at least very difficult for your reader to be able to see the need for it if we do not tell them gap that existed when we started this work. And yet somehow this is a sentence that is very often skipped or missing from abstracts. So you want to make sure that you have one full sentence that clearly and directly states for your reader exactly what that gap was, that research gap was, that this entire work exists to solve. Moving down from that, notice that this lime green color, or I guess staying in the same place, but this lime green color, we have that here. So remember I said before, this is a section that is optional, and I will show you an abstract that doesn't have this, but note that it is here because we needed to provide the reader with a little bit of background information for them to see where that research gap was. So that's absolutely fine. We have included this previous work section to cover our research gap. But if you don't need it, if you can include your research gap in your problem or in why the reader should care, then you don't need to include it separately here. You can skip this section and avoid giving any more background information just to save yourself space in this abstract, because abstracts are pretty short. We will talk about lengths towards the end of this when we talk about a couple examples. So next, notice our goal. So now towards the bottom of our introductory material, we have this one sentence statement of the goal of our research. And notice also how this goal is worded. So here in this paper, it's worded here, we, and talks about what the authors did in this work. Sometimes it's also worded in this work or here in we, but there is usually this really common text that indicates to the reader or signals to the reader that this is going to be the main thing or the main point of what we did here in our work. So then moving down, we have this statement of a gap. I'm going to pause here for a moment before I go to the next slide, just to show you guys or talk to you guys about this flow of the accessibility of the paper. So do notice how this abstract is organized and that we have the broadest scoped portion at the top of the abstract, and we slowly funnel the reader into the narrowly scoped portion around your research and the work that you did. And so here, this introductory material is acting like a funnel to help capture readers and teach them the little bit of information that you can give them in an abstract that would help them understand the need for this work or why you are doing this work. So moving on then from our goal statement, let's also look at the flow of this entire portion of the abstract. Guys, if you take nothing else from this talk right here, please pay attention to this flow. So first, we are setting up our abstract by telling the reader a problem that they should care about. So right off the bat, we are trying to get our reader invested in our field and in the work that we're doing. Then we follow that directly with a statement of a gap of something that needs to be solved, something that we're lacking information on, something that we need to do, something we need to make, whatever it is. So problem, gap, and then moving down from there, we have exactly how we address the gap in this paper using our goal or objective statement. So this flow can be really powerful by telling the reader the problem, the gap that we solved, and exactly how we did it, all back to back in sequence. What we are doing is setting up for the reader the importance of our work. We are showing them why our work matters and why that work deserves to be published. So please take this flow with you guys when you write your abstracts. Okay, so next, after our goal is when we can get into talking about our results. And so these are the main findings of your paper. Now, guys, again, notice you have about 3 sentences here. This is not a huge amount of space, okay? You do not need to tell the reader everything that happened in your research paper. Think about this again like that magazine cover, okay? So you just want to give them hints. You want to give them an idea of the different types of things that are coming in your paper. And any main findings are really interesting findings. So here you can use your experience as an expert. What things would you find the most interesting about this paper that would interest you the most in picking it up and learning more information? You can start from there here in listing your findings. Also, if you do have any key numbers, anything that came through your work, like maybe some kind of binding constant or inhibition constant that is important, you can think about putting those here as well. Also, though, focus on things like the most applied results. Those are going to really interest a lot of your readers, and essentially the main take-home messages. Like for you, if your reader remembers nothing else from your paper, what do you want to make sure they remember? Put those things in your abstract. Otherwise, I don't talk about this section too much. People are usually pretty comfortable with it and pretty familiar with it. And if anything, I have a hard time getting people to cut information from the results, not add more. So this is our results section. Finally, we have this one sentence stuck on here at the end of our abstract. And I will say this is the sentence that is most commonly cut from abstracts when people are running out of space. And this is a sentence that I never again want anybody in this talk cutting, okay? So let's talk about this significant statement. So here at the end of our research paper, so we've set up a problem. We have told the reader a gap that we needed to solve, how we solved it, given some idea of the results. Now the only thing left to do is bring this whole thing full circle. What did your results, what did your contribution do or change or provide to the field that was not there before? What is the impact that your work has had on this field? Why is your work important enough to publish? These are the things I want you thinking about here. And essentially, when you have gotten to the end of what your results are, what you're presenting here, I want you telling the reader, so what? Okay, so what? Why does it matter that these results now exist and are out there in the world? Okay, so this is what we're going to do here with this statement. We're going to try to bring this full circle. We're going to try to show what our contribution here is going to do for the problem and the gap that we stated towards the beginning of this abstract. These points here, guys, are going to make it much more obvious for your reader why this work is important, why this work deserves to be published. Okay, so guys, basically here I have this lovely little point that I like to remind people of. I think as scientists, we sometimes get it in our heads that if we give people lots and lots of facts, they're going to know the thing we want them to know, right? Like, at least this is how I still sometimes think. But the problem is the reader is never going to actually intuitively understand these things about our work. Here I'm talking about it in the impact specifically, but this could apply to anything. The problem statement, the gap, things like that. The reader is never going to intuitively guess this. And if they do intuitively guess something, I can guarantee you it's not the thing you want them to intuitively guess, okay? So the reader is not going to get these things automatically. And so it is our job in our research papers, in our abstracts, in our grants, in whatever we are writing to tell them this information, okay? What is the problem we were trying to solve? What is the gap that we addressed? What is the significance or the impact of that, okay? So this is what we're gonna do here in our magazine cover style abstract. Now, I'm going to now switch gears a little bit and talk to you guys about a communication style abstract or a much shorter abstract. So these abstracts are usually up to 150 words, whereas the abstract I just showed you from Jax is a standard abstract of 250 words. And there is a quote commonly attributed to Mark Twain where he says, I am sorry I did not write you, I'm sorry I wrote you such a long letter. I did not have time to write you a short one. And this is important because writing something short, writing something condensed or in a much smaller word count takes a lot more effort than writing something in a longer word count. So let's talk about what changes in our abstract when we switch from a long abstract down into a shorter communication abstract. So this abstract taken from Nature Communications, when I color it, it looks like this. So things to notice, I'm gonna give you guys a moment first and see if you guys are seeing where the cuts were made in this abstract. Okay, so looking at this, notice what we're missing here. So here in this shorter abstract, we don't have that lime green portion at all. So here we didn't need it because we fit the gap in elsewhere. So that sentence was cut. Also notice what other section had a sentence cut to reduce this word count, because it was the results. Okay, this surprises a lot of people who think that their abstract is better served by being absolutely packed full of results. And guys, that's just not true. Okay, unfortunately, that is just not how this works. Instead, we need to keep that extra information around our results to make the significance, to make the importance of this word clear and obvious for our reader. This is the zoom in and zoom out portion of our abstract. And so here, nothing was cut at all from the overall problem, why the reader should care, or the significance statement. So here again, I have already mentioned, but I can say it again here for us. We didn't need this gap statement in the lime green text, so we did not need any lime green text at all. Notice here how this lime green text was not kept just because for the readers, it was eliminated entirely to save space for the rest of the abstract. That's absolutely okay. You do not need to provide background information if you can state the gap in another way. Now, but notice here also, we are again still framing this problem. We're still making it so obvious for the reader, the importance of the work at the beginning, why it was necessary, why it was needed. We are starting from that overall problem, that generic statement that everybody from our journal should be able to understand. And we are following that with why people should care. And here we do have the gap rolled into that. So still setting up everything at the beginning of the problem, and at the end, we have a fairly long significant statement here. So it's taking up a lot of this word count, and that's still awesome because it is helping show why this work was needed, why this was necessary. Now, this is a surprising point that I like to bring up to people because I think we don't talk about this often. These framing portions of our text, these are the portions that are most often cut or shortened because we ran out of space in our abstract. But something we don't think about, guys, our work is never going to matter if we cannot convince other people that it does, okay? Our grants are never going to get funded if we can't convince people it is important to work on these topics. Our papers are never going to get published if we can't convince editors that they're important and reviewers that we did good work. And so part of science, part of making our work matter is conveying that. And so through not cutting any of these green or purple sections, this is what we are going to do here with our abstract. We are going to make sure that our results here matter because we are able to then convey them to other readers. So hopefully you guys also notice that a lot of the stuff I'm teaching you here, these techniques, they can be applied across whatever you're doing, okay? Yes, this is for abstracts, but think about this also for your research papers, for your grants, for your posters, okay? Don't just give your readers facts and think more facts, more better. Instead, we want to give our reader context and tell them why our facts and why our work matters. So here for you guys is an outline of a standard abstract. So this abstract, or this is for a standard abstract, which is about 250 words. Usually you're going to have 1 to 2-ish sentences for a problem and why the reader should care at the beginning, 0 to 1 sentences of the previous work or what has been done, 1 sentence of a goal or hypothesis statement, somewhere between 3 to 5, depending on the length of your sentences of your results, and 1 of your major findings. So this is how I suggest putting together your standard length abstract. Now, yes, good. I was hoping it was this slide. So let's quickly talk about what we've just covered. So here we have talked about standard abstracts. So these are the most common ones. The length is 250 words. You're going to have this type of abstract for most journals in pretty much any standard length research paper. This is going to be your zone. Now, for short communications papers or really high impact journals like Science or Nature, you're going to be limited in your abstract to about 150 words and sometimes less, which I think is crazy. Now, these are sometimes coupled with a significance statement that is more accessible to the lay audience. Guys, do you know why journals started adding significant statements? Because people were not showing the significance of their work. They weren't showing that context at the beginning and the end. And so journals started forcing people to do it by making them write an entire statement about it. If you have to write a significant statement for your journal and for your abstract, note that that is going to come mostly from the darkest green and the darkest purple colors of the abstract, with the gap in there usually written in lay terms. Then the normal abstract focuses a little bit more on a more scientifically worded gap in your objective and your results, but still the abstract itself will be quite short. Now, we have not covered conference abstracts and structured abstracts. So I'm going to talk about those here for one moment. If you are writing a conference abstract, the same rules that I have taught you still apply. Though you're in luck, you usually have a little bit more space. Here, conference abstracts are usually a bit longer at about 1 page. And note that these abstracts, instead of focusing on results or concrete things that you have discovered, usually focus more on what is in progress. They might talk a little bit more here than about the methods than about necessarily the results themselves, and will tell you a little bit more about what the researchers are actively working on at this moment. And you might not necessarily have results to write about in there. That's okay. Focus on what is in progress. Now, finally, there's one final type of abstract that we haven't covered here, and that is a structured abstract. So for a lot of often medical journals, you will have these abstracts that they ask you to have these structured subheadings within the abstract itself. Guys, these abstracts are the exact same as what I've been showing you here. It's just that you need to know which colors of mine go into which subheadings in this structured abstract. So here is your key code right here that you can use. All of the other rules that I have shown you still apply. You still want to focus on all of the same sentences in all of the same order as this. You're just going to fill them into this abstract. Okay, so now I apologize. I didn't actually warn the organizers I was going to do this because I forgot, but I'm going to go through some examples of the biggest mistakes that I see in abstracts, and I'm going to actually just ask for input from the attendees. And I think since we have a small enough number, it's not going to matter, right? Yeah, okay, great. So guys,
good.
perfect. So guys, as a wrap up here for abstracts, because I think this can be really helpful for getting people to really see this and think about this and how you're going to do it in your own paper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the abstract, one of the abstracts we just looked at, and I have modified it to reflect the changes that, or the mistakes that I most often see when I get abstracts. They're going to be colored, and I'm going to ask you guys to try to tell me if you can help spot these mistakes in these abstracts, okay? So here is our first mistake. What do you guys see or not see here? What is problematic in this abstract?
So feel free, guys, to just unmute if you want to answer the question.
If nobody asks, I can eventually help you guys out, but I'm going to put a little bit more pressure on you. Stare at you first.
I think someone texted, there is no general problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. There is no general problem here at the beginning. And guys, remember again why we have this general problem in there. We have this to make our work accessible to our reader. And so we want to make sure we always have that at the beginning. This is that zoom in portion that I talked about at the very beginning for bringing the reader into your work and showing them what they need to know or why they should care about your work. Here, this one, without it, it lacks context. And the reader is not going to know why they should even care about this field or about this project at all. What we want to do instead then is go in and add that one sentence at the beginning. It's going to say exactly why the reader should care about a broad problem that this work exists to solve. Oh yeah, thanks. I was seeing some stuff in the chat too, so.
Yeah, I will keep an eye on the chat then.
Perfect. Okay, guys, mistake number 2. What do you guys see here?
No significance.
Yes, exactly. This is another huge mistake that I see all the time, guys. And this is, again, one of the most sacrificed sentences for word count. However, this abstract has a very abrupt and unsatisfying ending. And if you don't believe me, I highly recommend going through, getting these slides, going through and reading through each one of these mistake abstracts. You will be able to see for yourself what each one of these mistakes does for your perception of this work. But here, you'll see that without this sentence, this ending just seems really abrupt and unsatisfying. It gives no indication to the reader of why this work matters, and it completely failed to bring this story full circle. The reader is left here hanging, wondering, so what? What we want to do instead then is add that one sentence at the end that answers that question for the reader. We want to make sure that the reader knows when they finish our abstract why this work deserves to be published, and we want to tie this work into the problem at the beginning. How about this mistake? What do you guys notice here?
A lot of findings.
It's a lot of findings. Remember, guys, more facts is not more better. So here, too many results is going to actually dilute the context that you have around it, so much so as to make it abstract and meaningless. Do you see what I did there? This context here, instead of being useful, instead of setting this up for your reader, it tells them very little. And your reader still has no more real information about why this work matters or why this is important is when you start it. So as a warning for you guys, just because you can color something a specific color does not mean that you have enough of it there. I want you thinking about it, analyzing it, make sure that the context that you have is sufficient. And as a nice rule of thumb for you, try to remember to keep your results to about half. Save the other half of your abstract for context. Okay, what about mistake number 4? What do you guys see here? Seems trickier, but I promise you an entire color is missing.
Gap and goal are mixed.
Yes, basically. And it's mostly here we're missing this objective statement. Now, this objective statement is going to show the reader what your purpose here was in this research. It's going to help them see the big picture of your project. This can really come in handy when you might have a reviewer potentially that has different expectations for the direction your problem should have went than you did. Here, we're going to make sure that we have this objective statement to set everybody's expectations for what our paper did and what our paper covered. Now, if your objective statement is missing after the gap, the one thing that I want you to do is to look for it in your abstract, because often the objective is not actually missing. It's usually just buried at the end of the results and worded like a little bit more of results, okay? But remember, this objective statement is going to be kind of that umbrella statement, overarching statement that covers your entire research paper. And it doesn't need to be listed as a result. It can be listed as an objective. But that's exactly what's going on here. This objective statement is buried in the bottom like a result. So what I would like for you to do is I would like you to find it. Find that sentence of your results that is the whole objective of the paper, move it up to after the gap, and reword it so that it sounds like that objective statement. Okay? How about mistake number 5? What do you guys see or not see here? How will the reader know how far the edge of knowledge moved in this abstract? What is missing? Okay, guys, I can help you out because it's a slightly trickier one. This one was missing our gap statement, okay? So here, oh, I just saw that we got a chat. Awesome. Yes, you were right. So this one is missing the gap statement. Without this gap statement, a reader is going to have to guess how far you moved that edge of knowledge. And guys, you don't want your reader to ever have to guess on this important information about your paper. So here, missing this gap statement is making the importance less clear. Always instead add that clearly directly worded gap statement after your problem, before your objective, so your reader knows the word. I'm so sorry, guys. My tongue is all twisted right now. So your reader knows the problem that your work exists to solve. Okay, guys, final guessing game, I promise. This is the last one. What do you guys see here?
So the chat mentioned an incorrect order.
Exactly. If there were prizes given out in this workshop, I think it's going to, I'm sorry, I'm not going to even try to pronounce your name, but you have answered basically all of the questions, so excellent job. Yes, you are right. This is in the incorrect order. And so what's going on here, guys, what happens almost always when this is a problem is that the abstract begins with a definition. Usually, this is not a great example of that, but usually it is a complicated term with an abbreviation after it, okay? And now that I have said it, you will never unsee it. This is how abstracts very, very often start. This is one of the most common ways I see abstracts start. I think it's easy for us to write, starting from a definition of something we know and want to tell the reader. But guys, starting with the definition, starting from background information, starting from something specific to your field makes your problem less obvious to your reader. And it's going to isolate any reader who doesn't immediately know what that technical term is you used at the beginning. I know we think, hey, we're giving them a definition. We've solved this problem. But that's not how people's brains think. They're like, I don't know about this topic. I don't care about this topic. And then they skip on from your abstract, okay? So what we want to do, I thought I had a so what, but I do not. So anyway, what we want to do instead is flip that around. We want to put the darker colors towards the top. We want to make it then obvious for the reader why our field exists, why this research exists, and then we can give them any background information or definitions that we need to give them, but we have already gotten them on board with this problem and why this exists. So again, this is just reminding you of this flow of starting with that problem readers care about, moving to the gap, and then showing exactly how this work addressed the gap. Okay, guys, this is what I have for you today on abstracts. So I'm here for any questions that you have. I will just let you guys know that this QR code right here is still for the slides. So if you are interested in these slides, please do grab them here from this QR code. And the one main thing I want to point out, because the YouTube channel was already mentioned, guys, if you like this talk, if you like my YouTube channel, if you like the stuff I'm doing, what I'm doing right now in about 200% of my time is I am working on making an online writing course. So I am taking my workshops and I'm converting them into very much a Duolingo style course of short lessons that are going to teach you the information you need, give you prompts to fill in, questions for brainstorming, show you how to take that information and condense it into what you need for your paper when you need it. I don't think there's anything out there that approaches it or nothing that will help you write a paper any faster than this. So if you're going to be writing a paper in the spring, this is, fingers crossed, going to be released the spring 2025. If you have scanned the QR code to get the slides, you will be notified when that comes out. Otherwise, just find a place to follow me. I'm on Insta, I'm on YouTube. It will be announced everywhere. But this course is kind of my baby, and I think it's pretty awesome. And if you're writing a paper, there's definitely going to be at least a free version. So definitely check it out when it comes out. Now I'm here for any questions, comments, concerns you guys have. Let's have it.
I'm already seeing some clapping hands. Thank you so much. This was great. I must say I really love this whole funnel idea of the abstract. I've never seen it that way. And it's like really, for being already so long in academia, for me myself as well, it's very mind-blowing to think it that way. And the fact that you also, this fact with the magazine, to have it as a front cover, really great examples of how to look at an abstract from these perspectives. So people, if you have any questions still, feel free to still ask the questions to the question chat. Or if not, we try to do it also a little bit more personal. So if you have the question, you can also feel free to ask it. We are not so many people, so I'm sure it's not going to get into too chaos. But I would like to start with one question already. So you mentioned it quite shortly regarding the conference. So I find it quite hard when I'm writing an abstract for a conference because I'm in the middle of the research myself. So I don't have this result fact yet, or maybe not even this like final sentence that says, this is why my result was now so great and amazing. How would you recommend someone writing such an abstract?
Yeah, so that's an awesome question because so many people are going to write conference abstracts, right? And so for more specifically for your final question of that final sentence of how do you write this so what impact, you can fix this really easily by making the beginning of that sentence we expect, okay? We expect this is going to be the impact of this work. And that's a perfectly reasonable, acceptable thing to do that is still going to convey that point to your reader. Now, otherwise, the conference abstract then becomes a little bit more about the setup. You have a little bit more about setting up that problem, a little bit more about that gap statement of, where that edge of knowledge was. And you will have your goal that sort of tells the reader where you are hoping then to move that edge of knowledge to. So your goal is going to become a bit of we're hoping to reach this, or we're attempting to do this, or we're trying to do this thing. And that's how you will focus it. Otherwise, the parts in the middle for your results, it's really, again, like I said, just the what's in progress. What are you working on? What are you trying for now? If you have any results, absolutely mention them. But here, this will become a little bit more of the methods that you're employing, a little bit more of the strategies or techniques or something like that, and showing the reader what's going on there.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So then I'm just checking in the other questions. I think most of the questions were already answered during your webinar and your talk. The one question we still had was also, do you prefer a shorter abstract that leaves more of the imagination, or rather an elaborated one that already covers the subjects quite well?
Yeah, so I mean, no matter what, you're going to be limited there by your word count. And my usual recommendation is to not leave words, like not leave space and not use it. So if you're given 250 words, then I suggest using the 250 words. You can find things to highlight in there for sure. At the end of the day, that's going to be your most limiting factor, not anything else, not what I tell you or what you feel like telling the reader. Your word count is what's going to limit you. But while I do like you guys relating this to the magazine cover, I want you thinking about that in the level of information that you provide. You don't need to provide every single detail about an experiment that you did, but you do want to give an overview of what the feel of this paper was. You don't want to leave it necessarily a mystery. It's not like a surprise or a secret. You want to get that information across, but you don't want to get bogged down in any details in the abstract. So if you're finding that you're getting sort of stuck in that in a lot of details and stuff, I'm going to ask you to just back it up a level. Back it up a little bit, try to look at it from a bit of a broader overview and see if that helps you get rid of some of these details.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, I have still also a final question, so I will still give some time to the others.
I will say I teach this as a workshop often, and I think I've gotten to the point where I know all the questions people ask me, so I just put them in.
So I just got. Yeah, so there was one question that I also often get this from my supervisor that is like, Marta, you didn't really catch your public. Like, who are you writing this abstract to? Or like, so how would you recommend changing your abstract? Do you change your abstract rather on the audience you're having, or do you change your on the goal, or are all the abstracts actually the same? We just follow your grade color code and then we are set to go? Or do you have any main additions or changes that you would recommend someone to really keep a close eye on in abstracts?
Yeah, so I mean, first, my answer is I recommend following my color code across the board. But in terms of the level of what to write or how to write, the way that I usually have my mentees do this is by asking them to think about who their target audience is for this paper, especially in terms of the gradient from you and experts in your field to people who might be experts in your niche, to people who might be experts, or to like people who are more in your broader field, and then to people who are scientists but not really in your field at all. So there are these sort of different levels here. And when you go to write, I want you using terminology and language and sentences that would be able to be read by the average member of the audience that you want. So if you're trying to put your paper in a very niche journal that's very expert audience, you can write to them. You can use terms that are specific that experts will understand that the rest of the world might not. But somewhere where a lot of my students get into trouble is that they want to get their paper published in their moonshot journal like Nature or something like that. They don't expect that they will, but they're going to submit there anyway once they've written their paper. But they write their paper like they're going to be submitting it later to their field or niche specific journals. And so they're using terminology that you need to kind of be in the field for to understand or the niche to understand. Whereas you really want to write to the broadest possible audience that might be reading this abstract or reading this paper. And what I want you to do when you identify who that audience is, whether they're in your niche, in your field, or broader than that, I want you to think about the college courses related to your subject that most of the readers of this journal will have in common. So for instance, if you're publishing something in the Journal of Computational Biology, most readers will probably have biology experience and computational experience. If you're trying to publish that same paper in Nature, you have to assume that your readers will only have basic biology experience and probably no computational. So the terminology you use and the way you phrase things will need to reflect that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that great answer. So we have actually a question from the audience as well. Can you provide an example of the exercises that can be done to develop this abstract writing skill? How could you, what are tips or examples?
Yeah, so that is a big question, because to be honest, one of my biggest tips for writing abstracts is to just write abstracts and have people read them, and lots and lots and lots of people. And so I will say that if you guys, oh, it's not on there. If you guys are super interested, I do have a video series that you can access through my website that will give you some instructions for how to go through and write your abstract. But my online writing course will give you step by step of like, first do this and second do that and third do that. So if you're looking for somebody to hold your hand and walk you through writing an abstract, like, it's cool. I will have you covered in like 6 months. So check back in 6 months and I'm going to have that step by step process for you if that is what you are looking for. Otherwise, if you are just worried about your skill in abstracts, just write abstracts. Write an abstract right now about the project that you are working on and have a couple people read it and tell you what they think. Because to be honest, the best way to get better at this is to just do it a bunch and have other people read it and give you their opinions and tell you what to do. But otherwise, you can go through the different parts of the abstract like I've shown you, try to make 1 sentence or 2 or whatever it is for each of those parts, put them there, and just keep doing that. Do that every time your project changes, just for fun, like just for you. And again, have people read it. Okay, so keep doing that, keep writing these, keep getting this feedback, and I promise you, you'll improve so much faster than you think you will.
Yeah, perfect. I guess we have to wrap it up because it's already 5:05. So all of you, thank you so much for joining. Kaycie, thank you for this great informative webinar. I've had many questions, many comments in the chat as well, that it was a great webinar. And I hope to see you all at the next webinar. So bye.
Thank you. Thank you guys for attending. Being great.